The Spinoff Podcast Network.
Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Kia ora, I'm Madeleine Chapman, host of Behind the Story. The Spinoff is on holiday at the moment, but here's a special re-up of one of our favourite episodes from this year.
There's a lot that I hope to achieve in this role and a lot that I think we can do. Hopefully we can sort of continue to inform and educate people about Māori issues.
Talofa lava, I'm Madeleine Chapman, editor of The Spinoff. Welcome to Behind the Story, where I go behind the scenes of a big article on the Spinoff from the week. If you want a weekly rundown of some of the best reads from the Spinoff every Saturday, make sure you sign up to the weekend newsletter. Today I'm talking to the Spinoff's brand new Ātea editor, Liam Rātana, about his first week on the job and particularly his first feature titled A Turning Point for Māori Activism. Liam joined the Spinoff from NBR and talks a little about the change in pace and what he's most looking forward to in leading our coverage of Te Ao Māori. Here's Liam Rātana on Behind the Story. Welcome, Liam. Your first week on the job, straight into the chair. Yes. How's the first week been?
It's been really hectic, but cool. I've definitely, I feel like I've hit the ground running. Had a lot on this week, but I've really felt like I've made the right decision by coming here and really grateful to be here. And yeah, it's been busy, but I'm loving it.
I mean, you have your first week, which is the budget, already a big day regardless, and then there's nationwide protests to the budget, but also to all sorts of government policies. Did you know that when you were coming in, you knew what week you were starting? Did you already have thoughts around how you might want to cover that through the Ātea lens?
To be honest with you, not really. Like, I knew that the budget was coming out, so I figured, okay, I'm definitely going to have to cover that and take the Māori magnifying glass to what's in the budget. But, I had quite a hectic end to my previous role, and then with a newborn son at home and lots of other things going on, I kind of was just excited to be here, and I wasn't sure what the sort of process might be for me settling in. But yeah, just things happened really quickly, and I think what I've enjoyed the most is having the freedom to kind of talk to you guys about an idea, and you're like, yeah, that's cool, write it. And so, yeah, with so much happening, I've been trying to keep up with everything, and we had the census come out, and there was some really interesting data in that. That I haven't even been able to really touch on yet because we had, like you say, the protests and the budget and lots of other things happening. So, yeah, it's been a busy week, but I'm really glad to be here and looking forward to sort of finding my feet and, yeah, tackling things as we go on.
I mean, your idea of how to cover the protests I particularly liked, which you did end up writing, and it was called A Turning Point for Māori Activism. I particularly liked it because it felt like you both really zoomed in and also zoomed right out, in that instead of covering just that day, you decided to look at history of activism and advocacy and the different ways that Māori have tried to enact change within governments. Some having more success than others and all methods having some degree of success. How did you find going into that in terms of wanting to frame it in a way that would not kind of set off a, big debate around should Māori protest or should Māori be looking to get into the room and, talk it out and convince the decision makers that way?
Yeah. I mean, guess I'll start with a bit of context first. So I've sort of grown up surrounded by, activists, sovereigntists, people who are really at the flax roots on the ground, protesting for change and really, really active in that space. And that was sort of, mostly due to my father, who lodged a treaty claim on behalf of our hapu, which was the result of him searching for whakapapa. And so long story short, sort of saw the progression of his journey from being a real activist on the ground and protesting, and that evolving to kind of him lodging a treaty claim and sitting at the negotiating table with Christopher Finlayson, the then Minister of Treaty Negotiations. And I sort of gained an appreciation for the power of both sides of the coin, and I felt like I understood that, or I appreciated the fact that what happened on yesterday, there is a place for that, but I also at the same time sort of understood that there are other ways to achieve great change, and I also recognise that a lot of Māori are in those spaces affecting change, real change in that way too. And so I guess I looked at what was happening yesterday and I thought to myself, yeah, there's a bunch of angry people and it's going to be covered, and rightly so, that they're pissed off at what's going on and the things that the government are doing, and they have every right to be. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of some of the changes either, but I sort of wanted to explore how else we could be pushing back against some of the changes that we might not be in favour of, and exploring how people are already doing that. And so it just kind of grew from exploring that idea. Then I was interested in who was actually organising the protest. I didn't really want to cover it in the way that I knew several other media outlets would be, because I kind of find that boring. So I was like, okay, well, we still ended up doing the live blog, and I sort of ended up covering it in that way. But that story was, it started from the exploration as to like who's behind it. As a journo, I wanted to see, okay, is there a spokesperson? Is there someone that I can talk to? We got a press release and I spoke to the person that we were told to speak to there, and I didn't really get a clear answer as to like who's on the organising committee, who's really the backbone of this movement and what's going on, because I find that interesting. And coming from like a business journalist sort of background in my previous role, I thought to myself, well, follow the money, like this movement was obviously well resourced. They had a website, they were selling merchandise, they were organising however many, dozens of activations around the country. So speaking to the spokesperson lady, Te Reti Moxon, she said, well, I can only speak for Kirikiriroa. And so she did that, and that was interesting and also confusing simultaneously, with her saying like there's Māori groups, there's Pākehā groups, there's the Anglican Church, and I was just like, okay, this is really weird, like what's going on here, who's in control? And so the more I explored it, the more the story kind of morphed from looking at what's happening to who's in control to like, why are we protesting like this? Is it really effective? And so that's where that previous context came in, and I just thought to myself, I think we need to take a look at other ways people are protesting, lobbying, advocating for Māori rights, and maybe it's time for us to consider putting more weight on other means or other ways of advocating for change for Māori. So, that's a long-winded answer, but it's sort of...
No, you covered everything.
Ended up there.
You covered my next 3 follow-up questions.
Sorry,
it was great.
I have a habit of doing that sometimes.
In the process of writing that story, you kind of just stood up and were suddenly on the phone to Shane Jones, which, people talk to politicians fairly regularly, but there is this sense of, when it's the Prime Minister or the Deputy Prime Minister or just somebody who has as much experience as Shane Jones, there can sometimes be a bit of hesitation from journalists to just call them up and try to go head-to-head with them over the phone. How important is that for you, especially in reporting stories within Te Ao Māori, to be comfortable talking to senior, very, very senior Māori politicians at the drop of a hat?
Yeah, I guess the way I view people is just we're people, right? And like we all have different job titles and we've done different things. And obviously Matua Shane Jones is a pretty important person in politics, but at the end of the day, he's just a person. And I know where he's from. He's from Te Kao, which is a small town from quite close to where I'm from. And, you know, I guess there's just a mutual appreciation. He knows that I'm from Hirekino. I know where he's from. And at the end of the day, we're just two Māori, you know. And so throughout my sort of career as a journalist, I've kind of moved away from, I guess, being intimidated, if that's the right word, but being afraid of talking to people who have high job titles or who might seem really important. You know, they are important, but I just always try to remember that they're people. And for me, the important thing is getting the facts and a difference of, you know, differing opinions, and sort of putting that out there for people to make up their own minds. So the decision for me to talk to Matua Shane was, I guess there were a few things behind that. One, I knew that he would have an opinion about the protests. I had seen his opinion already shared out there in media. But two, I knew that he would have a pretty good insight into what was going on that side with the movement, with the protests, with who was supporting it, how it was being organised and why it was such a big deal. And yeah, he definitely sort of validated some of the ideas that I had about what was going on there. But yes, so to go back to your question, I think it is important that we talk to these people and that we do treat them like people and that we aren't afraid to ask them questions, that we are just straight up with them. I don't know everything. You know, the more you know, the less you know. And so I think it's really important to reach out to sources and people who you know will be able to answer questions and shed some light on different things. And he just happened to be one of those people for that situation. So I reached out to him, and yeah, I'm lucky enough that he gives me the time of day because I'm from the place close by to where he's from. But yeah, it's cool to be able to do that. We live in a small country, and you know, back in the day, they used to say that you could pick up your phone book and open it up and call your local politician at home, and most of the time they might pick up the phone and answer. So I guess I'm still trying to kind of keep that attitude towards politicians, business leaders, people who, are senior and experts in their field, so to speak. So.
I mean, you mention business leaders because you did come from MBR, which is a business publication. How do you think that your work here will sort of evolve or change in terms of how you look at covering Te Ao Māori stories and also just editing the Ātea section? Is there anything in particular that you're especially looking forward to or you're excited to get stuck into?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm only 1 week deep, so I'm still getting my head around everything completely. But for me, I'm excited to be able to explore issues in depth. Obviously, like you said, I was at MBR, and there it was quite a quick turnaround. There was some room for, more in-depth analysis and feature-type pieces, but it was sort of get a story out every day, and the turnaround was really quite intense. And you're covering a lot, which, being the Ātea editor and covering Te Ao Māori issues is still quite a lot, as I'm sure you're aware. But I think what I'm looking forward to is being able to really dive deep into things that aren't just strictly business related, one, and things that I'm passionate about, like the Māori activism and lobbying and that sort of stuff, as an example of an issue or an idea that I really wanted to explore. So, yeah, I think the other big thing for me is being a Māori journo for, half a decade now, or over half a decade. I've felt like, and I might offend some people with this, but I felt like there's quite a few gatekeepers in the Māori journo circles and people who are really good at what they do, and rightly so. They have, these TV programs and shows, and they get a lot of airtime. As I get older and, learn about the industry a bit more, I also feel like there's a big space that we need to sort of open up for our younger journos and writers, especially in Māori, who are a lot more sort of clued up and switched on to what's happening in those circles that I wouldn't know about, And so I've always felt that maybe, I don't know if they're consciously doing it, but yeah, I felt like there's been this group of like really professional, high profile Māori journalists who have taken up a lot of space. And they've definitely created some space too, don't get me wrong. And I'm generalizing, obviously, but I'm excited about being able to potentially help build the careers of younger Māori journalists and people who are interested in writing and have some really awesome ideas that they want to explore, and supporting them, because those people, these rangatahi, will have the diversity of thought that us older lot don't have. And I'm sort of, I'm close to 30 now, so I'm sort of bridging the gap, I hope, between this bunch of really seasoned, well-experienced traditional journalists with the slightly younger journalists and rangatahi who don't have the experience yet, but are really interested in seeing where they can go. And hopefully I can convince a few of them to not just be broadcast journalists, because it's really cool that we have so many great matanga reo and the kohanga kids who are interested in broadcast. But I hope I can grab a few of them and pull them towards being, writers as well. Because I personally believe it's just as powerful, and you can often spend a lot more time exploring and fleshing out issues in this format, in this medium. So yeah, there's a lot that I hope to achieve in this role, and a lot that I think we can do, and you can't cover everything, but hopefully we can sort of continue to inform and educate people about Māori issues and provide some balanced perspectives on things, and sort of grow the base of Māori writers out there.
Cool. I mean, I'm excited to see what you do in that space, and I thought I would just end with the budget itself, because it was this week, and you, as we speak, you are just tidying up a column about the budget and what's in it for Māori, which sounds like not a whole lot. Can you give your just top line things you need to know, good and bad, in the budget for Māori? Yeah,
I'll start with the bad stuff so we can end on a bit of a high. But the bad news is that Māori weren't mentioned once in the 3 priority areas of the budget, which I think are justice, transport, and healthcare. But they were mentioned in kapahaka. So there's a funding boost for Te Matatini, which is cool, and I'm sure a lot of people will be happy about that. The other sort of space that we're seeing a continuation of funding is whānau order, which will, definitely have some benefits. But yeah, unfortunately, there were quite a lot of cuts for different Māori initiatives, different programs. We've seen housing cuts pretty much across the board for social housing and transitional housing, which will obviously have a detrimental sort of flow-on effect for Māori. But yeah, there were a couple of wins, which I think when you weigh up what's going on there, Māori can be happy that, like kohanga reo will be receiving more funding, and that's cool. So yeah, there was some acknowledgement, there was some funding there for Māori issues and Māori kaupapa, but on the whole, there were quite a lot of cuts, quite a lot of money taken away from kaupapa Māori that many people will be finding important. And I think that a lot of people will be feeling the impact of these cuts moving forward, and we'll see a lot less kaupapa Māori out there in the public space because of these cuts. Things like Matariki getting half its funding slashed and those sorts of things. So yeah, interesting times.
Cool. And you will be here as the Ātea editor, keeping an eye on things for us, which I'm particularly excited about. Liam has had a particularly big first week at the Spinoff. You can read all of his work, including the feature we spoke about, A Turning Point for Māori Activism, on thespinoff.co.nz right now. Thank you very much for joining me, Liam.
Ora.
That was Ātea editor Liam Rātana on Behind the Story. I'll be back next week with another Spinoff writer and another Spinoff yarn. Thanks for listening.
The Spinoff Podcast Network.